Welcome to the first ever edition of MTE's Workbench, a new series about breaking stuff and sniffing paint fumes. This is going to be a monthly release series debuting during the last week of every month. So, it's February 2024, and for the first month, I started off with a pretty simple project. A friend of mine has this insane obsession with these 36-foot beer can tank cars. He must have like 20 of them at this point. His overall plan is to make a string of cars lettered for colorful roads and for various drinks later on. So, he got 3 painted up and simply asked me to decal them. First 3 he painted were Burlington Northern, Chessie System, and Conrail. So I got decals ordered, and then I went out and bought some Microsol and Microset. These aren't necessary for decal work, but they make the process significantly easier and will make it look better. If you're new to doing decal work, buy some. The decals came in a couple days later, and I ordered a set of Conrail caboose decals, Burlington Northern locomotive decals, and some Chessie System caboose decals. I just placed them where I thought the decals made sense and bullshitted some random numbers up. If you are interested, Conrail never had a 2125, BN never had a 35, and Chessie System did have a caboose carrying the number 1806. After that relatively simple project, I got a package in the mail with a Lionel 242 in it. I originally was going to make a whole video about the repairs to this, but I would literally never have any chance of being monetized if I ever released it. I just swore all the time. This thing was frustrating. It's a Lionel 239, a scout locomotive with a smoke unit. My friend claimed it tended to randomly reverse direction, and after dismantling the whole damn thing, I managed to get run reliably in forward, but could not get the reverse to work properly. The chassis was pretty wrecked with a lot of cracks, so I've done my best to patch them up with super glue, and after patching up the chassis, it just stopped running. I'm not exactly sure how this happened. I didn't touch anything inside, it just stopped running. After about 3 hours of fiddling around inside, I waved the little white flag and decided it would be better to just replace the chassis that was damaged. If you follow my Twitter, you'll know I began cutting into my Spectrum 440 during this month. I removed the running boards and cut off the old dome as prep for a future project. I filled in part of the boiler strap that came off from some careless Dremel use with some milliput, and then stripped the body. I haven't done much else with this project as of writing this. Now for the project everybody actually wants to see. I made a joke post about 2 weeks ago saying that Conrail Berkshire will be real, intending to make a silly drawing and leaving it at that. Well, I drew it and I ended up really liking the design way more than I thought I would, and decided that that would become the fate of the Lionel HO Berkshire. I started by dismantling the body and then put the locomotive in tender shells along with the cylinders into 99% isopropyl alcohol. What I was expecting to happen is that the red, silver, and the lettering would come off, but no, that would be too easy. The entire body is painted green, and not just any green, but this indestructible green. I had this thing in isopropyl for a couple days, scrubbing pretty regularly with a toothbrush, and the paint just would not come off. My friend gave me some of his, and I quote, plastic safe paint stripper. It wasn't. The model was salvageable, and all the damage was relegated to making the body slightly rougher. Good for helping paint stick, I guess. After another couple days, I managed to get almost all the paint off through the help of isopropyl alcohol, and I got it ready for painting. I primed it all in Rust-Oleum white primer outside because we're having a heat wave in Ohio for some reason, and I did not intend to purchase any new paint for this project, and ended up using this Rust-Oleum paint and primer gloss black on the smoke box. It looked good in the end, and that would become the black paint I used in this project. I then used some of that black on the cylinders and painted the body with a Tamiya TS44 Brilliant Blue that I had left over from a few other projects. After painting, I reattached the cylinders to the chassis, and then it was on to painting the pilot and smoke box. I elected to paint most of those parts and then get the edges with a brush later on. I used Tamiya X1 for the touch-up since it was what my hobby store said would match the Rust-Oleum most closely. The guy was right. After that, a final touch-up along the edges, I painted the firebox in the same gloss black. While I let the touch-up paint dry, it was now time to get to the wheels. Lionel just hasn't bothered to paint the Berkshire wheels for the past 8 years, so it was time to see what they would look like painted. To paint the wheels, I simply just painted around the rods and then rotated the wheels 180 degrees to get to the other side. It looks significantly better, and I just can't believe this was not done at the factory. Now, it was time for the final touch. Many Conrail locomotives had a strip of white running along the bottom, and I felt the model just didn't look right without some sort of white stripe. I originally envisioned a white stripe down the boiler, kind of like the red bit on Southern Pacific 4449. I decided against this since it didn't really fit the whole freight locomotive vibe. Nickel plate Berkshires had a strip of light white along the running board, and that's where I decided it would go. I used a white paint marker since I didn't trust my skills with a brush. Nickel plate 765 also has white walls on the drivers. To To achieve this, I hooked up power to the motor and then just used the same white paint marker carefully along the edges and let the wheels do all the work. After that, the painting was done. It was now time to decal. I used a bunch of leftover decals from the Conrail tank car I mentioned earlier in order to set up O-gauge Conrail diesel locomotive decals for the tender. I applied the decals to the number boards, cab sides, dome, tender side, and the rear of the tender. I also elected to cut up some locomotive designation decals to make an S2 designation, same class as nickel plate 765. I like the nickel plate, have I ever mentioned that? And after that, I hit it with a semi-gloss clear coat, and I called it done for now. It's not perfect by any means, but for a first steam locomotive repaint project, I'm more than happy with it. The clear coat cracked a bit on the pilot and on the cab roof. The paint around the running boards is a bit sloppy, but again, first project, and it's pretty much leaps and bounds above anything else I've done so far. I'm happy with it, my club thought it was awesome, and I'll leave her as is for the foreseeable future.